Hey everybody, we're playing Pole DFS. I'm Ricky.
I'm Keaton.
And we're going to be talking today about NASCAR. I am in front of a brick wall because I am remote. I am preparing for my race tomorrow. We have t-shirts and everything now.
We'll be wearing them on the show next week. But yeah, Ricky Parker Racing.
25.
The car looks amazing.
If you want to follow Ricky Parker Racing on Facebook, you can. And then go from there. But that's why I'm awkwardly in front of a fake screen, and sometimes I glitch out.
Instead of right next to me.
So I'm remote. So if we have any issues, we can blame it on that. And if there's any issues with the PowerPoint, we'll also blame it on that. So we'll go from there. But we are at Richmond this week, so another short track. Third short track in a row.
I actually really enjoyed the short track racing.
That's because objectively short track racing is better.
Yep.
But as usual, we will start with our show beer. Keaton has a North Carolina beer, and I have a beer drank by many North Carolinians. Natty Light. Oh, one second. Let's see if we can get it.
Get it just in the right fill. There you go.
There it is.
I've got Radio Haze by Noda. Yep. Also one of my signs back there. Awesome Charlotte Brewery.
Natural Light by Anbev, a foreign conglomerate. But makes delicious light beers. As usual, thank you to our viewers. We get a lot of comments on Twitter and stuff, but obviously we'd love to get more. We'd love to get more views, more subscribers. So if this is your first time watching, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If this isn't your first time watching, make sure to hit that like button. Unless you haven't hit the subscribe button, then also do that. But also follow us on Twitter. Pin DFS at the bottom. I'm TR Parker 10, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, you need to update it to 25, but yeah, you're 10 for now. And I'm at John Galt JD.
Yep, perfect. And so, as usual, we will walk through our last week results, which were meh.
And then we'll run through the slate.
And then we'll run through the slate. If you watched last week's show, you'll know that I pumped Brad Keselowski, and then he lost his power steering like 10 laps into the race, and it was not awesome. And honestly, he was running better until he got into that really big crash in the backstretch. But, I mean, I put it here, short tracks are really lottery balls, and that's how this week is going to be as well, where there's going to be crashes. Some of the guys that you are going to be big on are going to not be able to finish. Or specifically just Eric Almirola every week, is just not going to be able to, finish where they're running. Some people who were running really, really well had some just super unfortunate things, which we'll talk about. Like Corey LaJoie just like randomly got hit on pit road.
That was brutal.
Yeah, he was running right around 10th, 11th.
Yeah. Great
run, and just got absolutely sideswiped and put a hole in the radiator, and what I found out was that they don't allow you to replace the radiator anymore. So he was done. But it happened to a lot of people. Suarez was another example of somebody who I didn't have very much of him, but he was somebody who was running really, really well, and then got caught up in somebody else's wreck, and then caught on fire. So, so it's just something that you're going to have to deal with when you run short tracks. They're a lot of fun to watch, but for DFS purposes, they can be hit or miss. If you hit them, I think, we talked about Keselowski, we talked about Truex, we talked about Hamlin last week, and, 2 out of 3 of those did really, really well.
We saw Hamlin run out front for a long time.
Yeah, and I had a bunch of Hamlin, and I was very pumped, and then everyone else in my lineup's just wrecked. So, it's just one of those things. This week will probably be a little bit better. Richmond's a little bit less of it's not quite as tight of a track, so there won't be a wreck that literally blocks the entire track of the backstretch like last week. So, but we'll see from there and as we go on. So, as usual, how the scoring works in DFS. If you're new here, then we have probably our first video goes in most detail on that, but we talk a little bit about it every video. There's 4 ways to score points. Oh, there it was, 4. You can do lap based or finish based. you get points for laps led, points for fastest lap, and then finish base, you get points based on your finish, and then your position differential from where you started to where you finished. So as we go to the next slide, you get 0.25 for laps led. Again, this is a 500 lap race.
More points.
So a little bit more laps to lead, a little bit more laps to be fastest. So as we talked about last week, it's very important to, hit those gunners correct. And the people at the top here, again, are more of the same people that we've seen basically every week. You look at since 2018, Truex, Kyle Busch, Keselowski. Kyle Busch has won 2 races here since 2018. Truex has won 2 races. Keselowski's won 1. And one name that does jump out that's a little bit, it's not always up here, is Kurt Busch, who might be a little bit of a kind of a sleeper pick because he's a little bit cheaper, not a ton cheaper, but as we'll talk about later. But as usual, Gibbs and Penske are up there. You don't see any Hendrick, which actually was a little bit surprising to me. And as we get to pricing, we'll see why I'm actually playing more Hendrick this week than I have in past weeks, which is probably surprising if you've watched me pump Hendrick every week. We'll go from there. And then
how do you feel about the Toyota cars being ready to roll at the Toyota owners for 500 here?
I mean, there's definitely the aspect of they don't want a Ford or a Chevy holding up the trophy with the Toyota logo on it.
It feels right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it'll be
those
interesting.
Toyotas will be ready to roll.
Yeah, I mean that if you are into random facts and you're picking of people, but I mean there definitely is the aspect of wanting to do well when your manufacturer isn't the sponsor of a race. There's definitely legitimacy to that, not just pure, not just random fact picking, like I said.
It's not just a fun narrative, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So again, onto the Ricky Bobby Award, you get more points. You get 0.45 points, and again, since we have 500 laps, that is where you're going to get more. You're going to get a little bit, more opportunity to get these fastest laps. And the top 5 here, fastest laps from last year, was actually pretty interesting to me because you see at the top you get Austin Dillon, who is somebody who has ran a lot better over the past 2 years really, and we've seen the RCR cars do well at various tracks. But to see him at the top of the list, he's not quite as expensive as we'll get to. He's definitely somebody to look at. And then the other one that pops out is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who, again, in a very similar spot with JTG Darty. Ooh, that was a struggle of a name. But as you see there, those are names that pop out, and maybe you can get a little bit read into that. Maybe it's just a red herring to run after that type of thing, to expect that type of performance to be repeated. But normally the people that are good at a track are going to be good at a track again. As a whole, I mean, obviously there's changes every year and that type of thing, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on as we talk about lower price racers and filling out your lineups, and maybe taking some chances on somebody like Stenhouse, who I think is low 6s. When I was saying, I think he's like 6,200. Okay. I can't remember off the top of my head, but and he's starting 14th, so there's definitely some risk there with the starting side. So
better than, didn't he start 6th last week?
Did he?
I think he started up high because didn't he finish 2nd at the dirt race?
I
might be misremembering all of this.
I don't believe that's correct, but it could be correct. He ran well at the dirt race.
Yeah, I feel like he had a really high starting position last week.
He could very well have. I didn't have any of them, so that's probably why. That would make sense. He got X'd out of all my lineups purely based on where he was starting, so it was definitely decently high. But I don't remember.
So one thing I definitely want to touch on this week, and looking at some of these lower price guys that potentially have some opportunity to score gunner type points, is the idea of a 3 gunner build. I know we had seen some comments in our last week from one of our favorite viewers asking about a 3-gunner build, and I actually ended up building a fair number of 3-gunner builds. But just the way pricing worked up at the top, it was tough to fit in 3.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be tough again. I think so. When I build my lineups this week, I think I was able to find more, but I also kind of stayed more. I mean, I definitely have some Keselowski. I definitely have some Truex for the top 2 guys, but I stayed in like the $9,000 range and the value that you get from like a Chase Elliott or a Kevin Harvick. I have a lot of Kevin Harvick this week, and so as we see whether or not those people hop off, that'll definitely be interesting. But as we go to the next slide, I mean, we look at just the fact that, obviously the points are important. And so, being able to finish up top is definitely going to be important. And so being able to do a multi-gunner, a 3-gunner system works really, really well if you're able to fill out with people who are going to also be able to finish well.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a trouble point. You end up, running into where you're playing some really low-priced guys that don't really have as much upside. I think this week there actually are a few guys that are really intriguing and could either really pop off and help those 300 builds or basically doom them. But I know Corey LaJoie, again, after how well he ran last week, he's dirt cheap and he's starting pretty far back. Somebody that I have a lot in a lot of my lineups is Ryan Preece. We were talking about Stenhouse on the last slide. That's a teammate car. He's starting 25th, I believe, so he doesn't have as much position differential. But if he can get up into the top 20, I think he's like $5,600 or $5,700. If he can finish 20th, he probably pays for himself and allows you to get that 3-gunner lineup that scores a lot of points and can push you over.
I think this week I'm going to take some chances on some of the lower owned guys, particularly with a high volatility race.
Yeah.
Because we saw people get smashed up, and how many cars finished last week? Did 20 cars finish last week?
Probably not. Probably not 20 good cars. I think like 30 cars, but I think there's only like 18 or 19 on the lead lap.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, there definitely is the aspect of, maybe those lower guys can, finish 25th if everyone else wrecks. I still am going to stay away from the low end guys, the 30th to 40th normal place guys. I don't think they're going to randomly start finishing 25th.
The equipment's just not there.
I just don't think so.
Okay.
But as we'll see in my pool, there are people in the 5s. There are people in the low 6s that can definitely, build out rosters that get you a lot of upside at the top and at the bottom. So as we go to, position differential, you have to couple it together. So when you're thinking about what to do, that's definitely an important where they start, where you think they're going to finish, and then go from there. So as we jump to Richmond, as you see, this is Kyle Busch from a couple years ago. I assume 2018. That's when he won both races. And so it's another close one to Charlotte. Not as close as Martinsville, but still decently close. I think it's a little bit over a 4-hour drive.
I love the winner does not get a grandfather clock.
Yeah, I made sure to edit that. If I would have left it in, I would have felt real dumb. But I was like, I don't have. The trophy is very cool. It's the state of Virginia, but it's not a grandfather clock. So, but yeah, it's 3/4 of a mile, so it's a little bit longer.
Okay.
Still a short track though, so you're gonna get hopefully some really good racing, and some mixing up and some we'll see what happens.
Cool.
Yeah, and again, my strategy this week, I think I'm going to have a mixture of 2 and 3 gunners. And I think what one thing I did when I was building my rosters, I don't have my distribution in this week because I built out our presentation before I actually built my lineups, and I'm actually not sure whether or not I want to go back and change all my lineups yet. But when I built them out. I have a lot of, high 8 and then $9,000 guys that I would consider all gunners, but the 3 there, but may not necessarily really be more of a 2 gunner with just a really high upside third person.
And so
but
who's that third? Someone like Bowman,
3.
maybe?
Someone like Bowman. I'm big on Bowman this week. He's just a guy at 20th or I think he's starting 24th or 25th. He's just somebody who's really out of place for position differential purposes.
And we've seen Bowman run out. I mean, he could easily score dominator or gunner points.
Exactly. It's going to definitely take him a little bit longer to get towards the front, but I think there's definitely going to be a week where Alex, the cards fall, the chips fall correctly, and he gets up there because he's definitely capable. But again, 500 laps, the gunner is very important.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point that one of our viewers commented about last week, is that just that 3 gunner lineup gives you that a little bit higher upside. I think it is probably a riskier strategy, but in some of these big tournaments, I'm leaning more and more to thinking that gives you a better shot on these 500 lappers.
Yeah, I definitely go back and forth on it. I think the big thing is that you have to hit at least 2 of the gunners. Either way, even
they're
if
so
you only,
expensive.
you have to hit them. You have to be right. They have to be the one that leads 100 laps, or they just don't make sense for your budget, and you're either praying that the 1 week that William Byron just destroyed everyone and led a ton of laps and was $8,200 or whatever it was. You're just praying that happens. But if you miss on, this isn't like golf where there's on any given week a $7,900 guy, or what is Stewart Sink this week, $6,500 guy is going to go out and just walk off with the tournament. That's not really how NASCAR is, and so you really do have to get that top end right. And that's one thing that we talked about with, again, the same viewer brought up was how do you pick those people? And I think there's ways to do it. There's some gut, a little bit of both, right? There's definitely this person's done well at this track, but there's also the aspect of you have to cut down your player pool, especially depending on how many rosters you do, where you can't just have one lineup with every gunner in it, because you're just risking your lower end just falling apart.
And you can't play everyone because your lineups will be so spread out that you'll lose to the rake. And so I think the point, at least in something I still struggle with, is I have FOMO. I want to play everyone, right? I mean, especially in golf, there'd be 30 or 40 guys every week that I'm I really like these guys. But I think that's a negative EV long-term play. On any given week, cutting your player pool tight will increase your variance such that you're either going to miss and finish really low, or you're going to hit and finish really high. You're not going to have that 40 to 60 percentile outcome as much. Whereas if you spread yourself thin, I think a lot more often you're going to finish in that middle range where you lose some percentage of your buy-in, but you don't go broke, but you're not giving yourself a ton of shots on goal to hit that big score. Whereas when you have a tight core, I think it's just the variance is increased and the expected value is increased because you have more higher end outcomes out there.
Exactly. And I think the thing about NASCAR is that, we know that 2 or 3 drivers are going to lead most of the laps. That's just by default how most, at least these types of tracks, are going to be.
Yeah.
And so you have to pick them, and you can't pick all of them unless you're doing. I mean, maybe if you're doing 150 lineups, sure, you can have 10 or 15. I mean, maybe even not then, but definitely when you're doing only 20 lineups, you really have to pick a few to kind of hone in on and give yourself different variations of a similar lineup, to where if you really like Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson or Kevin Harvick, you want the 1 to 2 to even if it's 4 or 5 people, right? But you want to give yourself enough shots to where one of those is correct and not that. But you also have to be willing to, some weeks lose all of your money.
Yeah, and
like
I think
all of your buying. No.
Exactly. Which is bankroll management is important, and also something I am still learning. But one thing, I kind of thought in my head as I build is I sort of have what I think of as my gunner pool and then as my regular pool, and I'm trying to trim my gunner pool down to maybe 5 drivers, and then I'm trying to put 2 or 3 of those 5 in every single lineup.
That's exactly how I build my lineups as well. And if you hit on when you hit on those, if you get those gunners right, then like you give yourself a shot.
50% Truex week. Let's
Cole
go.
Custer gets wrecked with 10 laps to go and just ruins everything. But I think that's, as you said, the best expected value plan is to do that and to go from there. And that's definitely how I think I set up, as we walk through this PowerPoint. That's how kind of I set it up, right? Like I have the highest price guys, and there's probably, I don't know how many there are this week, probably 5 or 6 off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I don't have all of them in my lineups. These are just the people that I would choose those, 3 or 4 or 5 people from. But like that's definitely how I approached it the same way.
Okay.
So one thing I wanted to note last week, if you remember, literally this entire slide was full of people. This week, I don't think it's the same way. There definitely is some, and there's people that I left off that definitely have some. I think like Eric Amarola starts 22nd again, and I'm gonna probably keep playing him until he actually finishes well because he's a good driver.
Do you mean actually finishes?
Actually finishes would be great. Yeah. If he actually finishes, he'll finish in the top 10. But the 3 people that I'm playing quite a bit of this week are Keselowski, who I think is going to be really high owned.
Even coming off the malfunction.
Huh?
Even coming off the trouble last week?
Him starting 20th just is such an obvious value. I think at $12,000, there's going to be some people that stay away from him. But I'm going to have a hard time staying away from him still. Or I did have a hard time staying away from him still. There's definitely some, like I talked about earlier, there's definitely some lineups that I like better that I built without him because I was able to get people, in the high 9s or low 10s.
Okay. And
able to build out a little bit better. But I definitely have a fair share of him, probably 30% of my 20 lineups. Somebody that I definitely have a lot of, probably too much, and will probably end up biting me, is Corey LaJoy, starting 36. The way he ran last week, if he can, stay out of trouble, I think he's shown that at least at short tracks, he's a top 15 car.
Yep.
And starting 36 and only $5,700. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Obviously, I think that new team's had some issues. I mean, it's not necessarily a new team, but it's a new team to him. And they've had some mechanical issues and some different things and just some bad luck so far this year. But, I think they've shown that, at least on short tracks like last week, that they're a little bit better than, DraftKings may necessarily be giving them credit for.
Yeah.
And then, again, I talked about it earlier, Alex Bowman is just obviously out of place in the 20s. He's a little bit expensive, but the one thing I wanted to note was that he's less expensive than he was last week. So he was like 92 or 9,300 last week, and he started around the same place. And he had a little bit better track record at Martinsville than he does at Richmond, but it's still not bad at Richmond. And I show myself every week that I'm a Alex Bowman homer. So, but
he's probably a top 10 car, right? Or at least a top 15
exactly,
car.
Exactly. And he's somebody who I think that, like I said, I think one week all the chips are going to fall right, and he's going to get out and lead laps. And if I don't have him in my lineup that week, I'm going to be sad. But again, I don't think it's as obvious as past weeks on the position differential side. I think, maybe not necessarily past weeks, but definitely last week.
We touched on it last week a little bit. The reason differential last week kind of got mixed up is we came off of like the wonky race, right?
The dirt race, yeah. And I mean, Martinsville definitely, there was a lot of crashes, but outside of a few people, there wasn't necessarily a ton of variance in like where people would normally finish. There was definitely some, Keselowski was in it, a few guys that ran better than they finished, but it wasn't as obvious as like at the Bristol Dirt Race where some really, really good cars got wrecked early and started way in the back last week. So if we look at favorites, and again, this goes to talk about Keselowski starting 20th and still the second favorite. So
what I see down here that stands out to me is Bowman starting 24th and still getting 33 to 1.
Starting 24th, 33 to 1. I put the 3 here because we talked earlier about how Austin Dillon and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. were 2 cars that were really fast here last year, and they have really long odds, especially Stenhouse. And I mean, I don't think he's going to win, but what's $100 on 100 to 1?
I mean, Stenhouse has got to win the Cup Series since I accidentally bet him to win the Cup Series. I'm not sure if I talked about that on the show.
And so, but those are some interesting odds. I definitely have some Stenhouse this week because he filled out some of my lineups pretty well. But as I put at the bottom, there's definitely some risk and reward available with them. I think they're a little bit cheaper, probably because of their starting position.
Yep.
And if Stenhouse finishes in the top 10 at $6,200, I mean, he's probably going to be in the optimal lineup. The problem is that if he has just an okay day and finishes 20th, he's probably going to kill maybe not kill you at 6,200.
He's not going to win with him. You may get some win cash or something, but
exactly. But the favorites again are just the same people as every week. I don't think there's any surprise there.
I feel like someone that's not up here that you mentioned is Harvick, and I don't think he's been running that well this year, has he? I feel like something's been
a little
off.
He's not been running great. He doesn't really seem to be having that much fun. I don't think his cars are quite as good. That being said, I have him a lot this week, so fingers crossed.
Resurgence week.
Yeah, I think he's a great driver. I think the cars are not necessarily. I don't think they're as bad as some people are making them out to be. And I think there's definitely going to be. I mean, he's definitely had some weeks where he's ran pretty decent. And I think there's going to be some weeks where he ends up doing a lot better. And I think this could be one of those weeks where, at a short track where the cars aren't necessarily as big of a deal, maybe he, the driver's side shines through. Or maybe I'm wrong and all those lineups just go in the trash because I have a lot of them.
Or maybe they figure out what's been up with the car. I mean, yeah.
So and as we go to the next slide, he pops on the, he is the third highest, point non, this is just straight, not value based, but just straight points based in my
based off the prior finishes, correct?
Exactly, based on his prior finishes at Richmond's in 2018.
So in my mind, I want to bump up Truex here because I feel like he's been running really well this season, and bump down Harvick because he hasn't been running as well this season. I mean, the prices reflect that. I
think that's completely fair, but also, like you said, the prices reflect that. I think at 94, like anytime you can get Kevin Harvick at $9,400, I mean, even if his car's not as good, it's something where like he's starting 9th, so like and at 9,400, you probably need him to finish top 5,
but he can get out early, yeah, definitely.
He can definitely do that, and like you don't have as much risk as with Truex starting first.
And you can fit in that 3-gunner lineup. He does round out a 3-gunner lineup at 9,400.
Like I said, that's exactly right. You can get, if you do a lineup of like Harvick, Busch, and Kyle Larson, who does not in any way pop off in my statistics because apparently he's ran not great at Richmond, but is still somebody that I think with being at Hendrick, the cars have just been better. He's been better. I think he'll ultimately do better. And he adds tons of value. He's not starting that super high. I can't remember where he's starting. He's starting the teams, I believe.
Okay.
And maybe 18, if I'm not mistaken. And so, he's definitely somebody who, as we try to, look for differences between the other people, go from there. But Eric Almirola isn't somebody else that was on here who I've talked about every week, but his average finish is 14th. He's starting 22nd. That's built-in points.
Yeah, as soon as he can finish a race.
What was that?
As soon as he finishes a race.
You are dead now. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can now. I turned you down.
Oh, okay.
This is the marvel of headsets.
I was just saying he just needs to finish a race to realize those points.
Exactly.
I mean,
That's
these are
exactly
all theoretical
right.
points.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. But and this is just him finishing 14th, and he's the third highest. I guess it's fourth highest.
And he can run.
Highest.
Yeah, he can run above that if he can finish a race.
Yeah, exactly. So he definitely can. Three other names that were in the top 10 in my stats were Suarez, Bowman, and Reddick. We've already talked about Bowman. Suarez is somebody who I've cautioned a little bit on, following the statistics side because he is in not a different car this year. But I think the Trackhouse team in the 99 has shown that they can run really well. And so he's definitely somebody that can finish in the top 15, and he's starting 27th or something like that. And so I think he's definitely somebody who can pop off. Reddick is somebody who's interesting to me because we talked about Dylan earlier, his teammate, being really fast here last year. He's starting, Reddick's starting a little bit lower and is obviously a really, really good driver. And so somebody who could definitely, maybe fill in that role where the Austin Dillon actually had last year where he was the fastest car for a bunch of laps. So he's somebody that I have a little bit of, maybe not a ton, and I may come back to buy it, but definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
Yep.
And then as we look at value, and this is where Suarez really pops off. He's somebody at $6,600 starting 27th. Again, his average finish is 17th, but he's ran really well so far this year. I've been very impressed by that team. I've been very impressed just in general. Last week he was running well until he got pushed out and then got caught in that wreck on the backstretch where everyone wrecked. But so he's definitely somebody who I think can definitely finish at least 17th, if not better. And if he does, he adds a lot of value at 6,600. Yep. Tyler Reddick right below him. Then Kyle Busch is somebody starting 10th, average finish of 4th. Harvick is there again.
Harvick and Busch, high dollar guys that pop in value. I feel like I say it every week. Those are guys I will. You convince me. I'll have Harvick this week.
It is either going to be very good or very bad. I have a hard time believing that Harvick continues to run not good as he has ran. So also in the top 10 here, Austin Dillon, Alex Bowman, Kurt Busch. Those are definitely people to keep an eye on as we move on. And then as we look at our gunner predictions, no, that's right.
I was right? Okay.
Yeah, you're good. And this is based on laps led at Martinsville. No, that's not right. This is Richmond.
Laps led at Richmond.
Somebody did this PowerPoint after a day of work, and that would be me. And but as you look at the top 5 drivers that popped off, in my model, I mean, it's not surprising. Truex, Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Joe Logano, and then I included actually, the 6th one here was Kurt Busch because I thought it was really interesting to include him because he's somebody who isn't necessarily traditionally thought of as a gunner, and he's not priced as a gunner.
Okay.
So he's somebody who could possibly. I mean, I think he's 87 or 89. We'll see in a second, but he's definitely somebody who can. Who has shown that he could be maybe a little bit better than he's priced and end up popping off. My other picks here.
Hamlin-Blaney combos last week that were looking really well for a while when they were running up top together. But
so I have a full disclaimer on Ryan Blaney this week because I'm playing him because of how well Keselowski and Logano pop off in these models. Ryan Blaney has ran terrible at Richmond.
Okay.
Not good at all. But I think he's a really good driver. He's shown he can run well at road courses, at short tracks, and I think his stats so far have been an anomaly, and that's where I'm putting my flag down. and so I am playing him a lot this week. He is substantially cheaper. I think he's like 9,200, maybe less than that. He might be 9. So he's substantially cheaper than Keselowski and Logano, and also where the normal price for Ryan Blaney.
Yep.
And so definitely somebody that I ended up putting in. I even put it in the Ricky's verdicts. He's ran poorly here, but he's cheaper than normal, and that adds value. My other sleeper pick is Austin Dillon. I think I've said enough on why I think Austin Dillon might be the guy. So we'll see. So this is my gunner pool again. Blaney's 9,100.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, I think the thing about this is the person that popped off to me, he's starting third, but Chase Elliott, 9,700. His average finish is 7.8. He hasn't won yet this year. He one of these weeks has to be his, and at 9,700, you're not going to get a cheaper Chase Elliott.
So at my job today, I met a very nice young, maybe 8-year-old, and he told me Chase was his driver, and so I promised him I would cheer for Chase this weekend. He was not happy when I told him I was a Kyle Busch fan. So I think actually the whole family gave me this look when they asked who my driver was, and I said it was Kyle Busch. That was
the wrong answer.
Yeah, it felt like the wrong answer, let me tell you. So I may need a new driver. So leave a comment below. I am a new NASCAR fan. I want to adopt a driver. Convince me below who should be my driver. Because evidently Kyle Busch is the wrong answer.
Maybe not.
I got some scorn from an 8-year-old who told me I need to be a Chase fan. So let's go Chase. It's
fair.
Chase week.
I definitely, like I said, I'm playing a lot of Hendricks this week. Hendricks? No S. No S. Hendrick this week. I definitely have Chase at 9,700, even Larson at 10.3. Again, this is a week where you can get Kyle Larson substantially cheaper than he's been all year. And yeah, he hasn't necessarily ran all that great at Richmond, but you're getting Kyle Larson for a lot cheaper than he's been all year. And I think there's definitely merit to that. We've seen him perform really, really well at a lot of tracks this year that he had just been okay at before. So there's no reason to think that he won't do well here. And so,
$12,000 Keselowski at the top is just so expensive.
It's so expensive. I still found him because, again, for multiple reasons. If you've watched any of our DFS stuff, I'm a huge proponent of you kill me one time, I go back to you. And so he killed me last week, but I'm back on him. Not as much, though. But also the 20th place. The thing about it is that if he wins, or if he finishes top 5.
Oh, all the points.
Yeah. And so you kind of have to have him. But if he doesn't finish top 5, then he's going to those lineups that have him in it are just dead.
I mean, basically, if he ends up crashing or whatever, I mean, yeah.
I definitely played around with some Keselowski Truex lineups.
Woo!
Just the idea it gets real cheap on the bottom end.
But you know what? I love that because you have Truex gunning up front, and by the time Keselowski catches up, and then he gets the gun for the latter half of the race, and one of those two finishes winning. Second. Oh. I mean, that's a dream. That's probably got to be a 2-gunner lineup, I'm guessing.
That is a 2-gunner lineup, boys and girls. 2 gunners. But I have a lot of 3-gunner lineups with Chase, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick.
Really, any of the guys, even like Hamlin down. I mean, Truex, you could probably do it. I just think building 3 has got to be tough with. I mean,
you can do it. I think as you'll see, under $7,000 this week, at $7,000 and below, I think there's a lot more options this week than there has been in the past.
Okay.
And I know I said that exact words last week, but I actually believe it more this week. So we'll see as we go. I think there are more options, especially in like the 5 range. I think LaJoy and Priest are 2 people that are in the 5s that jump out at me that probably should be a little bit more expensive. And then somebody like Stenhouse, who, again, we talked about the risk of him starting 14th, but at 6,200, he's definitely somebody that can fill out the bottom half of your 3-gunner lineups, even with somebody like Keselowski and Truex. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but most of my Keselowski Truex lineups had somebody like a Blaney or Bowman as like the third guy.
Okay, so still like a quasi 3-gunner.
A quasi, yeah, it's they're kind of like a quasi gunner in the third spot, and then reaching down to those bottom tier pricing guys. I don't think they're bottom tier guys, as I said before. I think they are. I think they're maybe not wrongly priced. I think LaJoy is wrong priced. I think LaJoy should be over $6,000. I don't understand how anyone watching last week's race could put him in 5,700, but
because the computers that make DraftKings pricing do not watch the races.
That is probably true.
All they know is what the ownership was last week. So this is what I've kind of learned is what impacts pricing the most week to week is ownership in the prior week and then performance in the prior week. So a guy that does really well, we'll see his price jump. A guy that's super high owned, almost regardless of how he performs, we'll see his price jump. Yeah,
that makes sense. And so, as we go into the kind of that middle price tier, on the next slide.
Oh.
And so, there's definitely some guys here, and you see position differential opportunity right here. I think this is a week where you're getting a lot in that range where, those guys could pop off. Somebody like, again,
Eric Jones.
Eric Almirola a lot, but Eric Jones is the same way, who I've apologized to multiple times so far this year. But I definitely found him maybe not as much as some other people.
He's a little expensive compared to what we normally have been paying.
He is a little bit expensive, but starting 30th, he's obviously a top 15 car. Maybe he doesn't finish that, but he definitely can be. He definitely has that potential. And so, at starting 30th, that's so many position differential points, opportunities. Yep. I think the people that jump out to me here is Bowman, again, starting 24th. Byron, I'm avoiding mostly. I included him because I've talked up all the other Hendrick cars. Why wouldn't I also include him, at least in my player pool?
I've almost considered him as another one of the quasi-gunners. Ever since we had that week where he ran out front for all those laps, he's shown he can do it.
He's a great race car driver, and he's so young that he's going to have weeks where, he doesn't necessarily run as well, but he hasn't had any of those so far.
Yeah.
He's been so consistent this year. And so, it definitely scares me a little bit starting fourth because he doesn't have that position differential upside.
Yep.
And I don't feel as confident about him being that gunner as I do some of the other guys starting up front. But, that's probably just me being slow to the William Byron train. More than anything. Yeah, I don't see any problems with playing him. I don't have him, but I also just as a benefactor of I just started Bowman or Kurt Busch over him. I like their position differential opportunity.
Honestly, Kurt Busch being cheaper and better point differential and having the better course history here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But William Byron probably an interesting pivot. I'm interested to see what and I haven't been keeping up with what his ownership has been week to week. But he's somebody who I think has overperformed his price tag every week.
And he's actually been low owned. Last week he was only, I think, 10 or 11% owned. Okay. I was actually pretty happy when I had him in a lot of my 3-gunners with like a Hamlin, Blaney, and then I considered Byron my 3rd gunner. But yeah, he ended up being the lowest owned of my gunner pool last week.
Yeah. And so as we go down here, Eric Almirola, we talk about every week. Some weeks he's going to finish 7th or better. He's just too good, and he's just had the worst luck.
DiBenedetto is another one.
He's somebody who has been just having terrible luck. He's starting to get up a little bit higher than I feel super confident on. He's shown that he can run short tracks well. He's shown that he has that potential. But starting 16th, I think he has top 10 potential. But I like if you were to put bullet to the head, I think he's going to finish 10th to 15th, and maybe that doesn't necessarily get you as much as many points as you would probably like to get out of somebody at 8,000. Especially when you can pop up to 82 or 8,300 and get an Eric Almirola or a Kurt Busch. Yeah. But I think it also means his ownership is going to be low because and somebody whose ownership I think is also going to be low is Christopher Wells, who I've
starting eighth is rough.
Quite a few weeks, and starting eighth is rough. But he is somebody in a Gibbs car, has shown some flashes. I would call them flashes, right? Like some weeks he's ran really well, and then some weeks he's ran 20th, and it's just been kind of weird. I don't know what to make of it, which is probably a little bit scary for DFS purposes, but I think definitely something that to keep an eye on because they keep pricing him in the 7s, and it kind of feels like he should be a little bit higher, but he hasn't necessarily performed in a way that necessitates that every week. Yeah. He definitely has had a lot of really good weeks, but then he has like random weeks. So I don't know. I mean, he was running well at the dirt race and got and spun out when he was in second and got destroyed, and that killed all of my lineups because I had so much of them. But again, down to 7,500 range or down to 7,500 is Austin Dillon. I think somebody who doesn't have the position differential side, but I think definitely has the top 10 plus side. If you were going to use that gun to head, I say he's probably 7th, 10th ish.
Okay.
Car would be what my guess is. Definitely could be better, but in 7,500, probably. I mean, you're probably looking pretty good there.
If you get the upper end of that range, you're definitely looking pretty good.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if he finishes 10th, you're probably not going to win. But if he finishes 5th or 6th, then like he definitely pays for himself and puts you in a position that, depending on who your other people are, to finish really, really high. So
particularly if he's low owned. I mean, the value in having a low owned guy that pops is you only are competing with that small subset of the field that has him when you have that guy that pops. And so
that's exactly right.
I mean, if Dillon's low owned and comes in at 5% and puts up a ceiling, finishes 4th or whatever, I mean, those 5% are going to be the only 5% that can win that tournament.
Exactly. And we saw it the week, again, we were talking about William Byron, the week that William Byron just put on, right? If you didn't have William Byron, like, you just had no chance.
No Byron, no money.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I don't know how Austin Dillon's ownership will be. I think it'll probably be a little bit suppressed because of his starting position. I think that'll probably scare some people away.
I think given that there's we're going to get to these options that are cheaper here that are still good, I think this middle range is going to come in way under-owned. You're going to have your traditional builds that start with the gunners and expensive guys, and because you have cheap guys, that's naturally going to allow people to build a stars and scrubs type build. And so that middle chunk of the board, this chunk basically, or maybe even some of those 9K guys we just looked at on the previous slide, I think are generally going to come in way under-owned.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Here, moving on to our sub 7.5K drivers.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys I like here. A lot of guys I like here.
The position differential that you see on the right-hand side just jumps.
Yes, exactly. And I think, some guys I really, really like. I really like Newman. Okay. He is somebody who has been consistently a top 15. Really, honestly, he's been a top 10 car. Like, I mean, maybe not every week, but like he's been around a 10th place car and starting. I've pumped him every week that he has started outside of the top 10. I've been pumping him, and this is going to be no different. He's a little bit more expensive than he has been. He was 6,500 for like 3 weeks in a row, and I was just like, you can't have him not in your lineup. And Keaton said, you can't have him in all of your lineups. It's going to be bad. And then he ran well, and Eric Almirola wrecked. But I think, he's somebody that I keep going back to because for some reason DraftKings keeps pricing him lower than he should be.
Yep.
So, but also Cole Custer right below him. Really the Newman, Custer, Suarez, and even Briscoe as you pull him up. I talked about Briscoe at nauseum. I think it's going to click at some week and he's going to finish 10th. or better, and at 6,400 starting 26th, he's going to be in the optimal lineup. And
yeah, Suarez and Briscoe are basically the same play.
I think they're very similar. I mean,
I guess it's just whose car do you feel is better at this point, or whose team? I guess. Do you trust someone with a real team?
I think that's the interesting thing, right? The Trackhouse team is newer versus the Stewart Haas, but A, Stewart Haas hasn't ran great this year.
Yeah.
B, I think Suarez as a driver is more advanced right now than Chase Briscoe is. Obviously Suarez is in his third or fourth year in Cup, and Briscoe's a rookie.
Yep.
And I just think that Suarez is a little bit further along. So I went back and forth. I think I have more Suarez.
I've been impressed with how he's run. I mean, we saw him run amazing at the dirt track. We saw him run well until he crashed.
I've been really, really impressed because I think it's really hard for new teams. And we've seen it with Bubba, who's at the top of this list.
Yeah.
You can have an alliance with another team, but it's really hard when you're putting together a new team to, know how to, not have the mechanical issues, not have, the work together between the crew chief and driver, and just everything is really hard to get right, right off. And I think Trackhouse in the 99 and Daniel Suarez has done really, really well at that.
Yeah.
And something that I think we'll see Bubba continue to do better at as we move along, but, not necessarily as quick. Bubba's had, mechanical issues some weeks, and then, some, setup aside, and then, he's ran better, and he ran pretty well last week, led some laps, and definitely, I think, looked a lot better than he had in the past, but not to the same degree that I think Suarez does. I think Bubba definitely has a higher upside because I think the Gibbs backing is a little bit more powerful than Suarez. I mean, the Trackhouse team is supported by RCR, but they are a true satellite team as opposed to whatever the Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan team is, because I just have a hard time believing that that's actually like the satellite team. So that's just me. But as you move down, you're getting into the low sixes and the fives, and these are people that I'm very interested in, and picking them is going to be interesting. So I like Stenhouse, who I've talked about a lot. I like LaJoy. I like Priest. The other two, Michael McDowell and Alfredo, I don't like as much. So I don't even know. Actually, I have no Michael McDowell. I don't think I have Alfredo, actually. I think I just have LaJoy, Priest, Stenhouse in that lower range.
So I had a lot of Alfredo last week and a lot of Alfredo Amarola, and then they smashed into each other, and that was awesome.
They did. And that's the thing, right? Like I'm a big fan of Alfredo, and I think he is somebody who, again, is a rookie, very similar to Chase Briscoe. I think is going to pop off, and then, probably not finish 10th because I don't think the front row cars are as good as the Stewart Haas cars. But there's no reason to think that. I mean, we've seen Michael McDowell run well this year at his teammate, and there's no reason to think that Alfredo can't finish top 20, around 15th or so. And there's going to be a week where he does it, and he's going to just make your lineup really, really good if you have him. He's a little bit higher this week. He's been starting in the 30th, like mid 30s, and he's been hard. He's been hard not to play. Like, he hasn't necessarily performed, but he's somebody who's hard to miss, at least in my opinion. But this week I really like LaJoy. Starting 36th, he has basically no downside, so he doesn't he can wreck and basically.
Yeah, what can he finish? 39th?
Yeah,
I mean.
Yeah. And so that's really good. One thing I want to talk about 39th in a minute, because that's an interesting conversation to have.
Okay.
But he has basically no downside, and I think he's definitely somebody that can finish top 20 after the way he ran last week, and I hope he does. I think he took a risk going to Spire Race Motorsports, whatever their name is, Spire. I think he took a risk there, and I've been impressed by. They've been a little bit inconsistent. They've been someone who's had some mechanical issues, had some different things. But I think last week was the first week that they really put it together and was running really, really well. Yeah. And so I hope that, that hard work comes to fruition there. But we'll see. But, I wanted to talk about 39 because starting 39 is Austin Cindric, who is $8,600, and I did not include him in my pool for about 4 reasons. Because
he's not a Cup driver all the time, right?
Yeah, so we ran into the same thing a few weeks ago when he ran. He has great position differential potential, but I don't like non-Cup drivers coming up. We've seen the learning curve that there is for Chase Briscoe. We've seen the learning curve that there's been. Even like William Byron's in his 4th year, and he is just now getting to where he consistently runs top 5 to top 10. Like Austin Cindric's even in a good Penske car, maybe he finishes 20th, but he's $8,600. That's too expensive for me. I don't see him finishing better than 20th, maybe 15th. Okay. And yeah, he probably pays for himself at that point, but I personally am staying away from him. I stayed away from him last time. It worked for me because he had problems, which is like not. I mean, did he have problems? No, he just ran okay. I think he ran like 24th or something like that.
Yeah, I don't recall.
And so, like, I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and especially as if he runs well this week, because I think he's running 5 races this year, and he's already ran. This will be his 3rd, so he'll have a couple more races. So as we go, if he starts to improve, maybe he starts to be more viable. But he's somebody that I'm staying away from at 8,600 because at 8,600 I can get Alex or 8,800 or whatever Alex Bowman is, or I can drop down and get Kurt Busch, and yeah, I'd lose 20 position differential point opportunities, but I also think they're just going to finish better.
Yeah.
So.
Now, is Cindric the driver that's driving the Kyle Busch truck tomorrow?
I know Kyle Busch is driving the Kyle Busch truck.
No, Kyle is not driving tomorrow. I saw a tweet.
Did they announce that?
No, yeah, so whoever the most expensive driver is in trucks right now is driving the Kyle Busch truck. He's like $13,000 or something, right?
I'm so confused. I haven't done any truck lineups yet, but when I looked last time, Kyle Busch was the most expensive. He was like $16,000.
Yeah, I think someone subbed in. Someone else is driving his truck.
It says he's 16.5 and he's starting. Oh, you can't see it.
I can't.
16.5 starting 12.
I swore I saw a tweet. I'll have to double check, but I swore I saw a tweet that said his truck's the 51 truck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I swore I saw a tweet that said someone else was driving the 51 truck this week.
We're about to find out. But nonetheless, Cindric drives for Penske, so it wouldn't really make sense for him to drive a Toyota because he drives Ford. But that being said, he is somebody who, he won the Busch Championship last year, or the Xfinity Championship last year, and is definitely somebody who could. I see nothing about it, but anyways, nonetheless, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on as we move forward. Is how well he does. I personally am going to stay off of him when he's priced that high, especially when, again, I pointed out Chase Briscoe last time. He was starting a little bit. I think he was starting like 33rd or something like that. But to be priced $2,200 less than Austin Cindric is ridiculous. And I understand that the Penske cars have been a little bit better than the Stewart-Haas cars this year, and I understand that there's a little bit more position differential, 12 or 13 positions starting difference, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I just don't get it.
You'd rather back a known commodity, a horse that we know runs well.
Yeah, and yeah,
I
just don't get it. I don't foresee it. I don't foresee it happening. Like nothing. Like very few instances have we seen somebody come up the Cup and be instantly successful. I just don't see it. But maybe I'm wrong, and I'll apologize next week, just like I had to apologize to Eric Jones. I'm so sorry, Eric Jones.
Cindric will apologize to you next week when you run top 10.
We will.
But when you finish 25th, we will say I told you so.
Yeah, I won't say such things. But I mean, that's as you can see our PowerPoint now. But
it's the kind of high quality establishment we're running here.
Oh yeah. I don't even know what we're looking at the moment. But nonetheless, as we finish here, I think it's definitely something to keep a look at and keep a conversation about. Is watching these people week to week, watching these drivers week to week, how their price moves is something that's really interesting. And on weeks where, I mean, I think that's why I'm playing a good amount of Chase Elliott. I'm playing a good amount of Kyle Larson. Of course, I play a good amount of Kyle Larson every week, but neither here nor there. I'm playing a good amount of Ryan Blaney because there's not going to be very many weeks where I can get them this cheap. And they're too good of drivers and too good of cars to consistently not run well. That's just my opinion.
And that's your Harvick theory too, right?
Yeah.
Same idea on Harvick.
Exactly. Exactly. And let's be fair, they're going to go out on Sunday, and Keselowski, Hamlin, and Truex are going to lead every lap, and I'm going to eat my words, but that's okay. I mean,
and then Austin Cindric will come down at the end and scoop a win.
Yeah, actually, Austin Cindric will lead the last about 120 laps. So
you heard it here first.
Yeah, and literally, dear God, the amount of points that he would get.
Oh, he'd break the slate.
But nonetheless, anyways,
thank y'all for watching.
Yeah, that's our week. If you have any questions, make sure comment below. Follow us on Twitter. Like, subscribe, blah 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 blah. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great rest of the weekend.
And good luck this weekend, y'all. We have no Xfinity, but we have trucks and we have
trucks
Cup
tomorrow on Saturday, and then Cup on Sunday.
And Ricky's running at the Tri-County Speedway at about 7:30.
That is exactly right. Tomorrow night.
So everyone think about the number 25 car taking down Tri-County Raceway.
Speedway.
If you would like a 25 Ricker Parker Racing shirt, he's going to put in the next order here soon. So send him a message on Facebook.
Yep. Bye.
See y'all.